Hi class, and welcome to social media marketing. The way I'm going to do this is to go through one chapter at a time with a lecture on each chapter and try to give a brief overview of the content within that particular chapter. The first chapter just takes a general look at social media and how it is developing, who are the players, etc. More and more people are doing social media. It's growing in all age groups, and it's proving to be a very effective way to exchange information, predict trends, predict demand for certain products, and to determine what sorts of messages might resonate with certain user groups. The way this is done is to analyze data about consumer use patterns and their conversations on different websites. And this is a look at least the top ones in the United States in 2011. A more recent article that I found lists the 21 largest ones in the world. And while most of them are US-based sites, there are some new ones that you're not familiar with, so you might take a look at these just out of curiosity. Social media marketing, of course, is the utilization of technology in various forms and formats in-game to establish conversations with either your customers or to monitor conversations between groups in which you might have an interest in one way or another, as one who produces content or one who produces certain products, or analytical groups, consulting groups who monitor this information for various customers. There are seven myths that your book talked about around social media marketing. That it's just a fad, it's just for the young, there's no return on investment, it's difficult for lots of different businesses, that it's brand new, and it's too time consuming for certain businesses to use, or most businesses. And the seventh one, that it's for free. As far as it being a fad, it's hard to argue that it's a fad any longer. In fact, a few years ago, I would have probably been in that camp. But it's a phenomenon that even if it reduces in some kind of form or fashion, is going to continue for some length of time, simply because the platforms that exist allow an exchange of myriads of information, ideas, content. And so I think that it's anybody that would argue that a passing fad doesn't really understand the depth of its utility for businesses and its depth as a form of communication within a number of within all cultures at this. It's not just for the young. In fact, there has been in Facebook a reduction in use, quite interestingly, on the part of the young, and the fastest growing groups are people over 55 years old. And although it's sometimes difficult to measure, there is a definite return on investment that can be calculated for using social media marketing by a number of different businesses. What's important is to define the intent or your desired outcome whenever you use social media marketing. And so you might use it just like regular advertising or promotion to create more brand awareness, or you might use it as a means to survey users of your product or service, or existing users, of what they find interesting or of utility about existing products, or what they might be interested in as far as new products. And finally, of course, you might be actually trying to promote sales. But those are all very different intended outcomes, and you need different metrics for each of those. And so don't start a program until you know what your intended outcome is, and that you have methods set in place before you initiate it to measure whether or not those outcomes have been actualized. Another common criticism or observation around social media marketing is that it isn't right for business in general. And that is simply similar to it being perceived as a passing fad. Its use is entirely too ensconced in most of the cultures around the world across various age groups, and there's still an upside in as far as utility in many countries as access to technology increases and different age groups are brought in. So it's a very good way, as I've talked about earlier, for businesses to drive word of mouth, to survey customers about many different factors around their products and the use of those products. Another interesting comment is that social media marketing is new, and I think that social media marketing has been around for as long as people can carve their initials in a tree or write their name in restrooms on the walls. It's only recently, through the new venues of using social media marketing, that businesses had afforded to them this myriad of different tools in which to promote, to study, to gauge a number of different intended outcomes with their customers. Another one is it takes a lot of time. I'll tell you that the one after this is that social media marketing is free. It probably should have been first. It's not free. It takes a lot of expertise to know what to do as far as managing a site. There's technological understanding that's involved. There's sort of a social study dimension that's involved, and all of those cost money. All of them take time, and it's not from the company's perspective free. However, you can minimize the time that it takes by looking for underutilized employees who can spend some of their time on these media. Maybe that understanding that they have, if they do, comes from their own utilization of it. So they have some insight into how the whole process is conducted online and how to keep it flowing. Again, most sites are free as far as not charging you perhaps any kind of fees to post on them, but on the other hand, why the fees aren't overt or the costs aren't overt. There are, as I mentioned earlier, expenses related around having to pay consultants for analyzing or maintaining sites, or paying employees within your existing organization money to maintain those sites. What's key to remember is once you start it, you have to keep it fresh, and so you need individuals, whether they're inside or outside your company, who will commit to keeping your site up and fresh. How is social media different than traditional marketing? In traditional marketing channels, the objective is to get your messages in front of individuals, and in hopes to persuade them. And the basic challenge is to minimize the amount of clutter, which is your competition, just the amount of messages created by all of your competitors, yourself, that the viewer must somehow sift through. On the other hand, social media has a much better capability of customized messages and utilizing media rather, for two-way communications. Again, the whole objective is to create a conversation on an ongoing basis between you and your users of your product or service. This raises a good question for all of you taking this class, both of you, as far as what might be the skills that would allow you to promote yourself as a social media marketer, or maybe to assume that position within an existing organization. Basically, you need some computer skills if you're going to be the one who is interfacing or interacting directly with the site. You need to understand issues like search engine optimization, pay per click, and other things that we'll take a look at. You need to be very familiar with navigating the web, and some knowledge of coding or graphic design is going to be helpful if you're performing this function, especially for your company. All of those are dialed up a little bit, obviously, if you're in a consulting context. As far as personal attributes, you need to be a good listener and personable, and able to effect that through a social media network digitally, not necessarily just directly. On the other hand, if you're doing videos, then you would need those skills more visibly in front of your customers, because obviously they'll be seeing or listening to you, or both. You need to be a good writer to some extent, and to be able to read and comprehend various data and passages that you might be dealing with yourself. And you need a level of an attribute of creativity. And finally, I think you need to be professional and passionate about this. It really takes a certain kind of personality to stay connected on an ongoing basis, I think, through these media.